Jon Jones, does he fight Tom Aspinall or does he fight Alex Pereira?
I've got a few hot takes, but one of them is that an interim champ should fight the champion next. Maybe. You know, heavyweight's tough, man. Heavyweight's really tough. They should be allowed to take roids.
Well, I don't think steroids is going to make him a better fighter or give him more IQ or make him more dynamic.
Whoa, is that a Jon Jones defense out of Demetrious Johnson there at the end? One message to the fans. So you will see a clip of me saying something you're like, what the hell did he just say there? I am a piece of shit, but my content's really good. Try and look beyond how terrible of a person I am.
Oh, it's 15-time world champion Demetrious Johnson. You're listening to the MightyCast.
What's going on, guys? This episode of the MightyCast is sponsored by PrizePicks. Now, PrizePicks is a daily fantasy sports game where you can play directly from your phone. All you gotta do is go to your app store, download PrizePicks, and when you do that, make sure you use my promo code MightyCast. They have a cool promotion going on right now. All you gotta do is play $5, and you're gonna win $50 no matter what happens in the lineup and the picks that you have made. They got the NFL going on right now, mixed martial arts, and NBA. Lock in your picks at the best place, which is PrizePicks. Shout out to PrizePicks for sponsoring this episode of the MightyCast. Now let us get back to our guest, MMA Guru.
Sorry, guys, I just woke up over here. But we're here.
True. You did just wake up. All right. Oh, shit. Here we go now. Yeah. Well, man, we're going to get right to it because we got a lot to talk about. First, shout out, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of the MightyCast. And we're joined by a friend of the show, MMA Guru, one of the men who's been putting, a lot of work in the mixed martial arts community. Some people don't like his content. Some people love his content. I'm going to let you guys know right now, I'm a big fan of his content. So, Guru, welcome back, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. It's good to see you again. I know you've been doing well with the content as well,
Yeah.
Enjoying your retirement, pumping out great content. We're kind of taking over this YouTube game, Demetrious.
I like to think we are. I mean, we've both been grinding since day one. You more in mixed martial arts. I was in the video game aspect, but now I'm full-time in mixed martial arts. And first, I want to say you're probably one of the greatest detectives that's never been a cop. Like the video you did on me and Dana White, going back through all that stuff and pulling all the stuff that, Dana White saying he never had a problem with me. That video was absolutely mint. S tier, my friend. S tier. Round of applause for you, my friend.
Thank you. Some say greatest detective, others say no life. It's one or the other, I went through a lot of old clips, but I also remember a lot, I don't mean to make a fat joke, but they say elephants never forget, Demetrious,
Yeah.
I remember every time I hear someone say something, I can hear their voice playing back the exact opposite in my head. And Dana White was an example of that when I was watching him say, nobody's defended DJ more than me. And then immediately in my head, I'm thinking, I remember you saying this guy's a coward for not fighting so-and-so and not taking this fight and being a diva about wanting to be paid $1 million as a champion in the UFC. So I thought I'd do it. My right eye is fucked up, DJ. I don't know what's going on with my right eye, but we're good.
That's okay.
We can keep going.
That's okay.
No,
Well,
it's okay.
I mean, you're not in a wheelchair, so you're not going to go blind. So I think we're off to a good start, right? Okay, well, let's jump right into it. UFC 309. Let's recap it. Let's go to the main event: Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic. Right? I wasn't surprised, and I think
Me neither.
that the essence of this fight was, I went on record and said, this fight doesn't need to happen for a world title fight. People are still going to tune in to see Jon Jones fight Stipe Miocic. And I'm pretty sure if Jon Jones wasn't a champion, he would still get pay-per-view points in his contract. So what is the whole essence of him being the champion? Well, by law, code RCW 10x10, when you have a champion and an interim champion, that is supposed to be the matchup that happens. When you have a healthy interim champion and a healthy champion, those two are supposed to fight. Granted, this fight was already made between Stipe and Jon Jones. Jon Jones gets injured. Tom Aspinall becomes an interim champion. Those two are supposed to fight. Stipe, at the time, the last time we saw him in Octagon, prior to this fight, is he got knocked out by Francis Ngannou. which is back in 2021. So
3.5 years ago.
3.5 years ago. Love Stipe, absolutely amazing athlete. You know, he's 42 now. In those 3.5 years, was he working on in the gym, trying to get better?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he was a little bit, but his main priority wasn't coming back and fighting Jon Jones. His main priority was saving lives, which is way more important than being heavyweight champion of the world or fighting people, right? So you had this essence where I felt it should have been Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall. Jon Jones has gone on record recently. We'll get to that part next, but I wasn't surprised that Jon Jones beat Stipe. Jon Jones is way too dynamic, way too good, longer, bigger. And yeah, hit him with a spinning back kick, floating rib, finished him. And, you know, I just did a breakdown, and, you know, Stipe's been knocked out multiple times in his career. So what Jon Jones did, it's already been done before, essentially. What's your take, Guru? What's your take?
Yep. Right. So, listen, I've had a lot to say about this. I don't know if you've seen my upload schedule, but we'll talk about the fight itself. I had like a bitterness going into it because, you know, UK guy, I want Tom, heavyweight champ. That would be big for me in terms of, I'd walk around London a little bit more confidently if Aspinall was the big champ of the UFC heavyweight division. But I had a bitterness going into it of like, ugh, yuck, I hate this. But now it's happened. I kind of appreciate that it did. There is nothing that has been more successful at promoting Aspinall than the fact that he didn't get the shot. Everyone rallied behind him, whereas, listen, Aspinall's a nice guy, but he's not really a Strickland that's going to win you over on the mic, or, you know, someone like that, or a McGregor coming up in his prime. So Tom Aspinall's a nice guy, but people have rallied behind him out of like, he's been done wrong. Sometimes it's good for a guy to be done wrong, especially when they're looking to be promoted moving forward. So I think that has subconsciously helped Aspinall here. But talking about the performance, I ultimately assumed Jon Jones was going to beat Stipe Miocic. That was not the shock to me. The question to me was, how good is he going to look? Is he going to blow Stipe out the water? He did, but there were definitely moments where I watched it and thought, oof, if that's a young heavyweight light on his feet with some high level of speed and power that's Tom Aspinall, then this could go a little differently. You know, Stipe Miocic is a legend, but he's also 42, been out for a long time. I don't think he spent 3.5 years in the gym bringing in like a Craig Jones to make sure his grappling's on point and all of this stuff. Like, I feel like he's been putting his career on the back seat, and then he's sort of seen this opportunity to make millions again against Jones and thought, yeah, I'll focus on this. But even in the training camp, he was doing part-time firefighting. But he looked good. Jones looked good. Spinning back kick to the body, really nasty finish. I actually said in my Aspinall interview that was one of the things that Jones had over Stipe. I mentioned in my Aspinall interview, I said this word for word. I said, one of the big advantages that Jones has is that he's dynamic and there's more for Stipe to worry about. Yep. Stipe's a lineal boxer. He doesn't kick very much, not above the legs anyway. He's not really an offensive grappler as much these days. He likes to avoid that if he can and keep it on the feet with his boxing. And I said, it's not like Jon Jones has to worry about Stipe Miocic's amazing spinning back kick to the body or anything. It's not that Jon, watch out for Stipe's great spinning back kick to the body. You know what I mean? It's not, I don't know. He has more of a chance to shock Stipe's system with an override of different techniques, you know? I literally said that. Yeah. And then boom, Jones catches with him because that's his advantage, the dynamicness that Jones can pull off with his athleticism. But yeah, Jones looked good. He won the fight. But I couldn't help but watch it, seeing him plod around in round 2 and think, are these the best heavyweights in the world, or are Ngannou and Aspinall the best heavyweights in the world right now? And these two are just in this limbo state of isolation fighting the older gen in the current generation, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. What's going on, guys? This video is sponsored by DoorDash. Now, DoorDash is a delivery service which is very convenient directly from your phone. All you gotta do is go to your app store, download DoorDash. Use Mighty 2024 to get 50% off up to $10 on your first order of 15 or more. Limited time offer. Very convenient, very easy to use, and you can use it all around the world. I love using it when I'm too damn lazy to cook any food, and I don't want my wife to cook any food. They can deliver alcohol to your place. You must be 21 and over, and it has to be available in the select market that you are in, and groceries, and even food from your favorite restaurant. If I'm in California, if I'm in Chicago, if I'm in New York, it picks up your location via the GPS, via the app, and it'll have it delivered directly to you right in your front doorstep. If you want to be lazy like your boy and have the food delivered to you, look no further, check out DoorDash. Shout out to DoorDash for sponsoring this episode of the MightyCast. What's going on, guys? This podcast is sponsored by VIIA Hemp. Now, VIIA Hemp is a premium hemp company that has products amongst multiple spectrums. They got stuff with CBD. They got stuff that's going to get you elevated, and they got stuff that's going to help you sleep at night. This is one of my favorite products right here. This is the VIIA Hemp Flow State, 20 milligrams CBD, 60 milligrams of CBG, B12 alpha GPC, and lion's mane. I got a long day of filming, getting all this content, and I take one of these bad boys. Absolutely delicious. And it helps with my recovery from a long, hard day of lifting weights. It's delicious too. They also have high premium flour, and they also have products going to help you sleep good at night. They get you at that zen level. That way your body can decompress and relax. Now, if you guys want to try VIIA Hemp, look down in the description below. Click on that, take a look at the website, and see if VIIA Hemp is a good product for you. I love to take it. The holiday season is right around the corner, and I like to use some of the products to get me elevated during a family gathering, just to relax, take the edge off, and kick back and relax with the wife and kids and enjoy my holiday season. Shout out to VIIA Hemp for sponsoring this episode of the MightyCast. Now, let us get back to our guest. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think the biggest thing going into that was we both agree that Stipe is very linear how he goes about his fights, right? And in those 3.5 years, you would think like, okay, I'm going to start working on some high kicks. I'm going to start working on body kicks. Okay, I'm going to start working on my wrestling to bring a different thing to the octagon. Because when you watch all his other fights, when he fought Francis, Junior Santos, Alistair Overeem, it's almost like the same fighter. Even DC, it was the same fighter. It's always approaching the fight with boxing. Not really wrestling. To where a lot of people, if I was in his shoes of, okay, if I'm going to fight Jon Jones when he comes back, I need to make sure I be more dynamic in my approach to this fight. And obviously, you know, Jon Jones, the IQ, the dynamic, the athleticism is just way above Stipe. But I think the biggest thing, like you said, would help Tom Aspinall is that he is even more of a bigger star, and he didn't even have to fight. Right? Like he became way more popular by just like, dude, this is who I want to fight. I want to fight the best in the world. If Jon Jones, if you claim you're the best in the world, then fight me. Like, I want to fight you. And Jon Jones has gone on record saying that I don't want to risk my legacy or my career against a young, hungry, dangerous opponent that's here today and gone tomorrow. Those are his words verbatim. And now when I hear that, that tells me that he sees Tom Aspinall as a threat, which I believe he is a threat because he is younger, he is faster, he does have that power. And does Tom Aspinall get hit? Yes, he does. Who doesn't get hit when they fight, right? So that was the biggest thing that I was like, okay, I understand that. But he said he's willing to risk it against Alex Pereira. Now, in a perfect world, if Alex Pereira didn't have, you know, Magomed Ankalaev waiting in the contendership spot, and you didn't have Tom Aspinall, then yes, let's make this matchup. Let's do Alex Pereira versus Jon Jones. But this is reality. This is where we live. At the end of the day, this is a sport. You have Tom Aspinall, a young, hungry, explosive, very good. You know, Jon Jones doesn't give him credit, but you got to give the man credit. Or it could be Jon Jones just cut him at the knees and just, you know, kind of like belittling his career. He's done some amazing things in the heavyweight division. He's put way more work in the heavyweight division in the last 3.5 years than Stipe Miocic has, right? So you got to give credit where credit's due. So Tom Aspinall, he's been doing some good shit in the heavyweight division that obviously warrants Jon Jones to be scared to fight him and risk it. Now, Alex has been killing it. He's been doing his thing, but he's also got Uncle Life, who's right there, that could be a great matchup. If those two can get past the number one contenders in their division, then you make this super fight. But Jon Jones going out there saying, like, I don't want to risk it to the young guy, but I'll risk it for the same guy who's the same age as me, who, is a big name too.
As a striker.
He's a striker. I think Jon Jones, that's an easier fight for Jon Jones against Alex Pereira. But it's just, that's the biggest thing that I felt like it kind of elevated this like cloud over this fight. Because for me, I wasn't excited to see Jon Jones come back. I'm excited to see what the outcome is of what decision he decides to do. Does he fight Tom Aspinall or does he fight Alex Pereira?
And instead, he preached Jesus on the microphone, which is nothing wrong with. I don't want to get all critical of that, but he was asked on the mic, like, would you rather fight? Joe Rogan was very big. I think it's strange that there's even being given an option, to be honest with you. I really do. I've got a few hot takes, but one of them is that an interim champ should fight the champion next. Maybe. There shouldn't be this like, Tom Aspinall's won the interim belt.
Yep.
He defended it. And listen, if Aspinall was sitting on the Pavlovich win, I would say, who's this guy? Sitting on the Pavlovich win, take the belt off him. You know what I mean? He stepped up on short notice. He's sat out for a year now, year and a half, whatever it would have been. And he's acting like he deserves all this. But then he defended it against Blades. And that's where I think it legitimized the interim championship. You know what I mean? In a weird world, he stamped his mark like, oh no, this is the guy at heavyweight. He's now beaten Volkov, Blades, and Pavlovich in, I think, combined just over a round, which is kind of insane to put those three names together like that. But yeah, I just feel like it's weird that there's Joe Rogan even being like, what about Pereira? You know what I mean? On the microphone in front of millions. And I'm like, dude, Tom's in the crowd, interim champ with a defense. Get him in the cage. Yeah. Jones just said he's not going to retire. Let's get him in the cage. Even for the UFC. I know they like Jones and they kind of want the Michael Jordan of the sport and they want to have that, especially with PFL coming along with Ngannou. I think this whole Jones Dana saga. Let's get into this as well. I think it's a Dana vendetta mission against Ngannou. In all honesty, he loves that Jones beat Garn a lot easier than Ngannou did. He loves that. Yeah. If Jones would have lost to Cyril Garn, there would have been this. The UFC doesn't have the baddest man on the planet, and Ngannou is. Look what he did against Tyson Fury, especially after the Tyson Fury fight. It was like, this guy's crazy. This one of the best combat sport athletes of all time, really. I mean, right? No one's really made that high level of crossover as effectively as Ngannou did. A different night, the judges give him that win against Tyson Fury. Yep. If they're not boxing judges, let's just say. But yeah, I think this whole thing has sort of been Dana. He wants John to be no other promotion can have him. We had the go. We had the best. The UFC did it before anyone sort of picks up any kind of steam of legacy outside the UFC. But I can't even remember what we were talking about. But yeah, Tom Aspinall.
Yeah, he's
great.
Yeah, Tom Aspinall's great. But here's another thing, a hot take too, is that, DC said it best. At one point in time, Mauricio Shogun Hua was the man. Like his name was way bigger than Jon Jones, right? He beat Rampage Jackson twice. He's beat, Ricardo Arona. He's beat Alistair Overeem. He's done an amazing thing. He's beat, I believe he beat Forrest Griffin. I'm not sure if he did or not, but he became.
Who we naming? Anderson Silva?
No. Mauricio Shogun Hua.
I didn't hear the name. You cut out a bit. Shogun Hua. Okay, cool. Yeah.
So he's
all these names.
He was a big name at the time, and he didn't have to risk it against Jon Jones. When Jon Jones stepped on short notice, he didn't have to risk it. He didn't need Jon Jones in his legacy, right? But exactly. Mauricio Shogun Hua gave Jon Jones that opportunity to both make a name of himself, and Jon Jones capitalized on it. Now, I feel like it's the vicious cycle of mixed martial arts or any sport. And if you look at Russell Wilson, when he was hot, I don't know if you watch American football, but at one point in time, he was probably considered one of the best quarterbacks because he ushered in a new era of quarterbacks. A quarterback who can sit in the pocket, who can run, and a quarterback who can also throw the ball. Same thing with Cam Newton. But these guys, they stuck around for way too long, and then you had newer generation football players coming in, right? So I feel like it's the same thing with mixed martial arts. If Habib would have stayed around long enough, somebody would have came in and beat Habib and made a name off of beating Khabib. Same thing with Jon Jones. It's almost that time. If Jon Jones is going to stick around even longer, you got to give the guy the next shot, the opportunity to be able to make an. It's the same thing with me. It's like, okay, I beat Adriano twice. He beat me once. I already beat Danny King. I already beat Yuya Wakamatsu. I already beat Tatsumaki Wada. The only other person I haven't beat in the division was Kairat Akhmatov. He popped for steroids or whatever the hell his drug test came back. Okay, I'm kind of bored of fighting. Am I going to come over to the UFC, fight Alex Pantoja? Am I going to fight Steve Erceg? Am I going to fight Kai France? Am I going to fight Brennan Moreno? No, I'm bored. I don't enjoy training anymore. So I retired. But if I was still in the UFC and I was still the champion, I was on, a 15 consecutive title streak, then, and it's a next number one contender, I would assume that I would fight because I did it 11 times in a row. Yes, they try to make that TJ Dillashaw fight, right? We had a little stipulations in there. All I asked for was $1 million. They act like it was a lot of money. And I also went in their contract and said, if TJ Dillashaw does not make weight at 125, we fight for his belt at 135. They said no, so the fight never happened, and I was too scared to fight TJ Dillashaw. So I think terrified, right? But I think what Jon Jones could be doing is maybe setting something up. He said he would consider fighting Tom Aspinall if the number and a check is good. That way, if he did lose to Tom Aspinall, it doesn't really matter, right? So it's a very hard thing when you peel back the onion. And Dana White said it. He goes, Jon Jones needs to fight Tom Aspinall if he wants to fight again, right? You look at Jon Jones. Jon Jones, you want to fight Tom Aspinall? I want $40 million. I can't give that to you, Jon Jones. You're not getting Alex Pereira. Done. Jon Jones retires. Or does Dana White go back on his word and say, you know what, Alex Jones, you guys to fight? Because Jon Jones already said he would relinquish the world title, right? And he says he doesn't care about it. If he doesn't care about it, then why should I care about it? Like if a champion doesn't really care about his belt, then it doesn't give me significance that I should care about his belt. You catch my drift, right? It's like, I'm going to divorce my wife. I don't really care. That's like, really? I mean, granted, it's two different things, but it's just such an interesting, convoluted problem where it's like, it doesn't have to be a problem if we do what you said. It's like, the heavyweight's fighting the interim champion. Done. If you don't want to fight anymore, Jones, you can just ride up in the sunset because Alex Pereira has a number one contender that he can fight. It's not like these guys don't have people to fucking fight.
Aspinall doesn't. This is the reason why I would say UFC, even if it is 40, 50 million, I can drop it once on a fighter. Jones is the fighter to drop it on. They've probably dropped a good, I would say they probably dropped a good 20, 30 mil on a McGregor fight. A few times. 100%. 30. I'd say about 30 for the Khabib fight. That would be my guess. But they should drop a 40 mil drop on Jones because it's for the health of the heavyweight division.
Yeah.
They need that because think about the heavyweight division. You said Pereira has Ankalaev. He also has, there's names. Azamat Mirzakhanov, Nikita Krylov. That's a name fight. They're both really good fighters, both of them. And if they win, there'll be some level of hype. And they've got Carlos Ulberg coming up in the division right now as well. He's putting together some good wins. And, there's even like if Khalil picks it back up, there's that rematch because of how competitive the first fight was. There's options. But at heavyweight,
there's nothing.
There's nothing. There's literally nothing going on at heavyweight. There's Jailton Almeida, which is a matchup, but not a huge matchup that everyone's aware of. And based on his previous performances, people aren't too fond of him because he's not crazy exciting guy. He's not picking up these highlight reels. Heavyweight's known for knockouts. People tune into heavyweight to see a big first round finish and get it over with. But other than Jailton Almeida, I mean, there's the Cyril Gane rematch, but then the UFC might fall into that trap of if Gane beats Aspinall, now they don't have the best heavyweight in the world again, if the PFL still has Ngannou being active. Gane being the heavyweight champ at the end of all of this would be the UFC's worst nightmare, in my opinion. So I think dropping that check on an Aspinall-Jones fight is probably the best thing they can do because then it would open up the Pereira movement to heavyweight. Even after that, even if they don't want to drop as much money on that fight. If Aspinall were to win, then the Pereira fight were to happen, it gives them a year of a future while they figure stuff out. Because right now they've got a 4-0 Mick Parkin coming up in the division. And it's like, I was even trying to talk to Aspinall about that, and he was like, "Oh, Mick Parkin's got no chance against me, mate," and all of this stuff. But they're training partners, so even that's a bit of a weird dynamic for them. And I was thinking, oh, Jonata Deniz, and then he gets blobbed by Tybura, and Tybura just blobs on him and sits there squatting on him in mount, and it's just like, yeah, there's not much. They need movement, you know, in the heavyweight division. Heavyweight's tough, man. Heavyweight's really tough. They should be allowed to take roids. That's my hot take.
Well, I don't think steroids is going to make him a better fighter or give him more, you know, IQ or make him more dynamic. But
Whoa, is that a John Jones defense out of Demetrious Johnson there at the end? That was a really slick way of very well defending John Jones being on roids.
You know what?
You almost said, I don't think steroids would have them beat DC in a rematch.
You know what?
By head kick.
You know, we can have DC on here. And the hardest thing with the whole thing, you know, some of the guys in the MightyCast staff might think, you know, that PED, the PEDs, that John Jones is, you know, pop for member is a picogram. You know, I've been in mixed martial arts for 18 years. I've done so many drug tests, and all my drug tests have come back clean. Never gone to a gas station, got dick. None of that stuff. Dick still get hard when my wife comes out the shower. I don't need that. So that's always going to be an overhead cast over John Jones. It was funny. My kids are watching the fight, and when they're naming all the things that John Jones has accomplished, and are like, oh, he's gotten in trouble. He's done cocaine. My son turns around and goes, John Jones does cocaine, Dad? And I was like, son, that was in the past. I don't know what he does now. But I couldn't believe the UFC said that, like, in the build-up. And my kids were like, motherfucker does cocaine, Dad. And I'm like, one, I should let you guys watch South Park, because that's the only reason why you guys know what cocaine is. And two, don't worry about that. But it's just interesting. I agree with you. There's no movement in the heavyweight division. And it's just hard, because now we have to sit back. Well, we don't really have to sit back. But if John Jones truly does not want to fight Tom Aspinall, and then what do? Do you say, okay, fuck it, Alex, you fight Ankalaev? If you end up beating Ankalaev and you beat another contender, then you fight Tom Aspinall, right? Or they're going to have to spend a lot of money and go get some new breed of heavyweights. Because you think about it, yes, John Jones has won the belt and he's defended it. Tom Aspinall has won the belt and defended it. So technically, they're both tied for how much work they've done as a heavyweight champion in the division. But it's just such a hard, it's a hard problem when it shouldn't be a fucking hard problem, essentially.
A few things to say on that. I think in terms of the heavyweight problem, a fix they could do that PFL will do if the UFC do not do it, they will give Rico Verhoeven a top contender and give him some preparation on takedown defense. He tried to make an MMA run before, and it didn't go well. He got taken down. He was beating up a guy. He got taken down. He ended up losing, I believe. But Rico Verhoeven, glory GOAT, I would say. I don't know about GOAT, actually, but decade-long glory heavyweight champion in kickboxing. Decade-long without losing, which is insane. He's known. He's been in videos. He's been in conversations more. They're talking about doing him versus Ngannou in like a hybrid rules at PFL, like a kickboxing match, pretty much, which I think would be interesting, because Rico, if you know Rico, of course you do. Do you know?
I think
Rico
I do.
Verhoeven.
I think I've seen him before, because he was talking about coming over to mixed martial arts. He goes, "Hey, let's make this happen." But nobody's really. There hasn't been much steam of trying to make it happen. Essentially, like nobody else is trying to make it happen.
But I think he subconsciously is, because he's been training with Aspinall for a long time. He's appearing in his YouTube videos. In the last one they did, he was talking about a hybrid rules matchup with Ngannou at PFL. And I'm thinking that could be the X factor that you bring in if we see how Pereira did. If you bring him in, pay him a good chunk, give him a few fight contract right at the deep end, who's to say you don't just knock out a top contender real quick and then all of a sudden there's some narrative behind him. But Rico Verhoeven is an option to save. I want to get back to the roids though, DJ.
Oh, God.
Rico Verhoeven fights December 7th in Glory. Okay. He does. He has a rematch against someone that spinning back fist knocked him down. Yep. It was a good fight. He fought a guy in a Grand Prix. Thank you, Nick, for that, dude. But yeah, he does have a matchup coming up in December. Maybe he gets on the mic and states what's next. But I do want to get back to the roids on John Jones. I personally think, and I'll say this is a hot take, it isn't the best for the sport to have a GOAT of the sport in John Jones and then say, oh, by the way, he's also the one with the most drug testing anomalies in his career as well. Because it does, to me and to lots and lots of fans, I'm sure you know the difference between, I'm not saying from experience, but you would know that it's, a lot of people think roids turn you from A to B. You just be some wimp. And then you take roids and all of a sudden you're Jon Jones. Like, I don't think without roids, Jon Jones is losing to, Carlos Felipe, the regional heavyweight that got cut from the UFC. I don't think that happens, but it is that edge that you have when it comes to recovery, when it comes to going into fights healthy, training healthy, not going into things with injuries. It is that edge that you have, especially when Jones goes on a Smith, Santos, Reyes back to back to back within a year. It's that thing that keeps him fresh if he is on something, which he is. It's tough. I don't know if he is right now, but he has been, so you can assume that he still is. But I just think when it's all said and done, I'd love to have a GOAT of the sport that you could hang your hat on, like you, like GSP, like a guy right now that's pushing forward, like if Khabib would have went on a little bit further, where you could hang your hat on him and say, this guy's the GOAT with no asterisks. There's not this, he's the GOAT. Oh, and by the way, he just so happens to be the guy with the most failed PED tests in the modern UFC era.
Well, first we had to figure out how many failed drug tests did Jon Jones have. So while I give you more of a discussion, he said, let's go.
4 or 5.
We can have the producer Nick. Nick, while we're doing this, look it up, and so we can have like a clear, number of how many he's failed. But that is the hardest thing about this sport. Right? Depending on who you ask, Dana White's never going to acknowledge that stuff. He'll probably say, he went to court, they tested it was a picogram, et cetera, right? For me, I think we're all athletes, and I've been tested at the liquor store from USADA. I've gone swimming, and when I came up from a lap, USADA was right there. It's almost like she just had fucking deja vu. She's right there. I've been tested all around the world. I've never hid from a test. I've always been compliant of giving, blood, urine, whatever they want. Now, Jon Jones does have some, unconclusive, I guess you say. Well, it is conclusive because they said it was a picogram. My first thing is like, what is that doing there? Right? I mean, there's so many athletes there that have popped. I remember Sugar Sean O'Malley said he was grappling somebody and he tested positive for something that was inside of it. Everybody's popped for something. I've never popped for anything, right? So for me to sit here and be like, okay, Jon Jones is a cheat and he's done steroids, I would have to be like, I want to be naive to say that he never did it. Same thing with TJ Dillashaw. Like, when he came out and popped and he says, I took EPO, I was flabbergasted. I was like, why? Why would you, like, you know what I mean? So, Gordon Ryan, he's came out, Craig Jones, they come out and say, I take steroids because everybody else is doing jiu-jitsu, right? And then my question was like, hey, Gordon Ryan, do you think you'd be just as good and be able to compete at a high level without steroids, right? He won't come on the MightyCast because I'm just going to ask him blatantly. I'm just asking straight up. Same with Donald Cerrone. Donald Cerrone, he wants to come back and fight. He's been on TRT and he's been, straightforward. He goes, it makes me feel fucking great. I mean, with the train again, I recover faster. And that's what steroids does. It helps you recover faster from what people are telling me. So only person who truly knows if they took steroids or not is Jon Jones. Will he ever come out and say, yes, I've taken steroids? We have no idea. But, he does have, an asterisk on a USADA test. And for you, if you think if somebody's going to be considered the GOAT in mixed martial arts, they have a clean record. Let me ask you this, Guru, because you have probably the biggest following in mixed martial arts that you built from day one. What do you consider a GOAT in mixed martial arts? Like, what is it for you that gives that somebody earns that label?
Perfection, level of competition. I think when it comes to the greatest of all time, being great is an achievement of greatness. You know what I mean? How many great wins do you have? How many great moments do you have? That's what it comes down to. And listen, Jon Jones is the greatest of all time. He is. There's a lot of people that, listen, if we want to get into who's popped, Makhachev has popped before. And a lot of people have him like nearing the borderline. If he picks up a few more, he's going to be in the conversation. And there's a lot of names in the sport that have popped before. Like even you said O'Malley there as well. But I'm not saying O'Malley's near the GOAT conversation, but you know what I mean? There's a lot of names that have popped for something. So I know there's all of that. I consider Jon Jones the greatest of all time. You know, you achieve legacy, you achieve it against names people know at a top quality competition. I think you're in the conversation because you did it across different promotions. I think that's a huge edge for you, to be honest with you. Especially at ONE FC, where I think the lighter divisions are a lot more credentialed than the heavier divisions. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
The heavier divisions, they almost don't have opponents in the heavier divisions. I saw Derrida speaking about that and Malakin and all of this. So I do consider an achievement of greatness. How much did you achieve? What did you do? Did you beat everyone you lost to? Who did you lose to? How good were they? Those things stick out. At GSP, he lost twice. He beat both of them. He redeemed it double. Got the double champ status. There's just how much do you one up the guy competing with you? The guy people are comparing you to. We see Nick has typed in the chat here to get back to the roids. 3 failed tests for PEDs, 1 for cocaine.
Okay.
He typed in the chat.
Okay, well, cocaine isn't a PED, right? So we can go ahead
in some places to perform, it could be.
You know,
but in the cage, maybe not.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and say right now, when I started dabbling in THC, shout out to VIIA Hemp. VIIA Hemp sent me some good stuff. Had a couple of tokes, and then next thing you know, the next day I went to the gym, did about 10 to 12 rounds. I swear it made me faster. And I told my coach, like, dude, this is a PED. He goes, no, you just got a lot of rest. That's what you got. You got well-needed rest, which helps me recover. So in hindsight, it could be considered a PED because it gives me the opportunity to relax my body. And, cocaine, maybe. I don't know. It's an upper. I've never done it before. So people in the chat, if you guys have done cocaine, please leave in the comment section below to let me know what it does for you. And then what was the other 2 Nick said?
You have 3 failed tests for PD, 1 for cocaine, PEDs. With Jon Jones, it's just like, it was the pop for Turinabol. I do want to mention this. It was a pop for Turinabol, trace amount, but there's levels of understanding of this DJ. So I get there's the naivety of... Maybe it was just this that popped up in his system. We've seen it with many fighters before. Yep. But when the fans, I'm speaking as a fan here, you're a fighter, so you see Jon Jones and think that the cocaine, or not the cocaine, the PED didn't make him go to the body early against DC and then whip a head kick up out of nowhere and catch him off guard. You know that. But as a fan, and speaking for the fans, what we see is who's popped for something trace amount that has just been brushed over. Yep. We see Sean O'Malley, a future superstar in the company. We see Jon Jones, the GOAT of the sport. Who's the only guy to grow a boob in the octagon? It's Adesanya in the modern era. Just so happens to be the front runner and the leading star at the time. It's funny to talk, but fans notice that the only ones with these anomalies are the ones that are either just so happen to be the best in their division, just so happen to be above the rest, or just so happen to be like a guy that they want to create into a star. Who's the guy that finds out in the sport that you can take out of the USADA window and get on roids to recover? Weidman didn't know about that when he broke his leg. McGregor did. McGregor pulls out of the testing window, takes the roids. It just seems to be there's a gray area, and that gray area very heavily benefits, just so coincidentally, the stars of the sport and the best names at fighting in the sport. And when it comes to Jones and his failed tests, they talk about Turinabol, they talk trace amounts. The Turinabol pulsing in his system wasn't proven to be done with Turinabol. It was proven to be done with Clomid, which is another failed test of Jon Jones that he had when he tested positive for Clomid. And that was something that was said, the Turinabol, it's pulsing in his system because Clomid has done it before. And Clomid has stuck around in people's fat cells and popped up again long after they've taken it in a trace amount. But Jones never tested positive pulsing for Clomid data. There was also the thing that came out after the DC fight, one of the DC fights. Someone might have corrected me the other day, but one of the DC fights, it came out that he had the testosterone levels in that fight of a castrated male. They were very, very low. And I don't think Jon Jones is castrated chemically. So something in that DC fight must have been replacing his testosterone. So I think there's a gray area, but then there's a thing that the fans see and they think, we're not hearing about the pulsing picograms of, who's to say a name? We're not hearing about the pulsing picograms of Carlos Diego Ferreira.
Yeah.
We're not hearing about the pulsing picograms of a Jim Miller. We're not hearing about the pulsing picograms of a Suma Dwerji. Maybe he has actually before. I'm not sure that somehow springs into my mind. But we only seem to hear about these anomalies in this random thing popped up in their system.
Yeah. Well,
McGregor takes that the testing window. Jones pops for this 3 times, 4 times. A few other things here. And then you see these other names. Adesanya grows a boob. You see even in lower divisions. You see Dillashaw. Who's the bantamweight in UFC history that is the guy that has the drug problem or the PED stain on his legacy? Just so happens to be Dillashaw, who has a conversation to be the greatest bantamweight of all time. So for you, as a fighter, you understand the game differently and you go, the roids ain't making Jones fight the way he does. That's Jon Jones. And I get that from a fighter perspective, but the fans go, God, it's only the greats that are having these problems. There must be an edge. There must be an advantage. Is that the reason for the advantage? And that's what the conversation is. Just to get it out there. Yeah. Just to get the argument out there.
Yeah. So I'm going to approach it in 2 aspects. One, I think Israel Adesanya's his chest, the pec. I remember something, it was like a medical condition and he got it checked on. Nick, while we're going over this, you can look that up. But let's talk about that whole thing about the failed USADA test. For me, I'm such a black and white person where it's like, okay, you failed a fucking test. There's no reason why it should have been there. Right? Like there's just no reason. There's no excuse. Right? I've done many, many drug tests and not one thing has ever came up in my test. They tested A, B sample, nothing. I'm never taking anything, right? So I feel comfortable saying that. So for me, when I hear you say that, like, he's had 3 failed drug tests, one is cocaine, I'll let that one slide. The other 2, my first question is like, what the fuck's that doing in your system? That's like my hard ass, like, what is it doing in your system? And the hardest thing too is like, at one point in time, you had TRT that was, people got exemptions for TRT. Yeah. Right? So
but wait,
that's something that it's also, I don't know who was on TRT or whatever. Right. But for me, if what you're saying is that if somebody who has a failed USADA drug test, they're not in the GOAT conversation, I should, because for me, I understand, like, when you're in a training camp, you need to recover. If you can't recover, you're not gonna be able to train harder, So for me, if I was to sit back and be like, okay, Jon Jones has 2 failed drug tests. From what I'm saying, okay, you're done. You're not in a GOAT conversation. You're exempt. GSP, let's look at your record. Clean. Everything came back clean. Boom. You're on there.
Demetrious Johnson, your record. Everything clean. Everything, no stain.
No stain. You look at Habib. Clean. Shit, Michael Chandler. It's clean. No stain, And here's the thing, too. When athletes suffer a horrific injury and they get out of the USADA testing pool and then they take steroids, if they take steroids, I don't know if Conor McGregor's taking steroids, but I just rather people come out and be honest about it. It's like, hey, dude, I broke my fucking leg. I got out of the USADA testing pool. I jumped on steroids to help my injury heal faster. And now that I'm off steroids, I'm getting back in the USADA testing pool to be able to compete. Why not be open about it instead of having this cloud, right? I'd rather athletes be straightforward that they take steroids like they do in the jiu-jitsu community instead of in mixed martial arts, right? But then again, it's going to, discredit everything they have been able to accomplish or they've done. So for me, how I am, it's like, you failed a test, doc. Nah, you don't get it. You're out of it, right? So it's just so hard because I don't want to take away the greatness that Jon Jones has done.
I know.
Right? You know what I mean? That's the hardest thing. It's like, man, you failed a drug test. It was a picogram. It shouldn't have been in your system to begin with, dog. That's how I feel. But it's a hard conversation to have. It's a very hard conversation to have because, USADA said, oh, it's good. He passed, even Sugar Sean O'Malley, like even him, I left him to death. And he said, do I look like a guy who takes steroids? Like, no, you don't. You're not, boom, shred it. But it was in your system. Why was it in your system? That's
why?
And that's why I love USADA. USADA is fucking king dingaling because they will come for you wherever you're at and they will collect that sample. You can hide, you can run, but they don't get that urine and they're going to get that blood.
Yeah, they're going to make it happen. But on that point, I get exactly what you mean. But maybe we're entering a new era where fans are just I think fans that came up, I was before the USADA era, but there's a lot of fans now, especially that watch my stuff, that are joined during USADA. So they're on the You're an OG fan of the sport. You've been around for so long. You've seen the Wild West of, I know this guy's blasting all kinds of chemistry. This guy's a walking chemistry experiment going into the cage right now. So you know that era. Whereas the fans that are watching my content and the fans of just after my generation of fans, they're of the USADA era where they have an expectation that everyone is natural and everyone is clean. And I think that's like a new expectation moving forward. So I just think we have enough proven or no stain on a legacy people like you, GSP, Khabib. We have other guys moving up right now that are pushing towards high legacy status right now where they don't really have a stain on their legacy, where people are kind of like, do we need to have the argument of everyone's on it? So just because this guy had this, or not because everyone's on it, but you know, a lot of people have tested positive. So just because this guy doesn't mean he has to be out of the conversation.
Yeah. And I think, prior to when it was the Wild Wild West, a lot of those guys who were over in Pride in Japan, they were on the sauce, right? Like I never forget one of my coaches, Brad Kurtzen, he was over there and he saw Mauricio Shogun Hu and he goes, holy fuck. He was massive. And then they come over to the UFC. They don't even look at Alistair Overeem. That's another prime example. Somebody who was small. I mean, when you're 18, 21 years old, you're almost at that peak performance of which you're going to be able to develop, right? And if you look at Alistair Overeem, 23, 25, and then he blows up, fucking massive, all this. There's no way you could put that amount of muscle on your body in a short amount of time while doing high-level cardio. There's no way. And he said he ate horse. Possible. Yeah, it's not possible. He said he ate horse meat on one of his interviews. And then now
I don't know what those horses were on, but they were on some kind of HGH, it seems like. I don't know.
Yeah, and then now you look at Alistair Overeem, he's way more leaner. He looks more what his body is, his natural muscle capacity of his genetics would be, essentially, right?
Yeah.
That
what
is
he used to look like.
What he used to look like. That is a
People forget that about Alistair Overeem.
Yeah.
He used to be a very lean, slender, lanky kid for a kickboxer. Even when he was fighting these big names like Chuck Liddell,
Yes.
he was like a lean, Liddell was like pushing him around as like the smaller guy and then he sort of inflated into this thing. But I get what you're saying there, because when you said Overeem and talk about roids, I think immediately, oh yeah, look at that Lesnar fight. Oh my God. Because what the narrative is, of course, Overeem was on something, but look at the guys he was fighting.
Yeah.
Even then you brought up Shogun, and then I was talking just about Jones testing positive, and I'm like, well, Jones had these few little blimps in his career, but we know Shogun was on something. So are we going to hold Jones too accountable, knowing that these Pride guys have been on things before? So I don't know. I just think there's a different mindset of fans that have come up in the era where they have an expectation that people are natural, and they have an expectation that there should be no blimp on their legacy. That's all it is. There's a new movement, and I think it's good for the sport. I think it's very good for the sport.
Oh yeah.
Where it's not, that's just how it is. That is a mindset that there has been. And I think the new movement is that's not how it is. It can't be how it is. But when it comes to Lesnar, I mean, you said USADA don't tolerate things. He did test positive for his test before the Mark Hunt fight. Allegedly he did.
Yeah.
So it gets interesting. That's what fans are kind of up in arms about.
Gotcha.
The names we're mentioning. Lesnar, huge superstar, saved the UFC, heavyweight champ, became a huge name for them. John Jones, just so happens to be the greatest of all time. O'Malley. McGregor finds out about the way you can dip out of the window.
So we're
smart people, Demetrious. So we're onto it. We're detectives over here.
So what I feel like you're putting down that the UFC is helping the fighters, kind of navigate this career, I guess you could say, where it's like, hey, here's a little bit of this. Go ahead, do what you got to do. We'll make sure you get out nice and clean. Is that what I'm getting? Is that what I'm hearing from you, Guru?
Seeing as I'm a huge target for the UFC, because I've found out recently that they all know who I am and they're not fond of me. All I'm going to say is fighters that no one cares about and aren't moving on towards potential GOAT status don't seem to test positive for things and don't seem to have these anomalies that can all be figured out within 6 months. Let's just get the show on the road type thing. That's all I'll say. I need to be careful. Well, there you go. Look, Nick has been correcting me the whole time about the testosterone in the DC fight, and the Izzy guy knows he said it was smoking weed. Interesting. Nate Diaz would have 2 double D cups if it was about smoking weed. And then even here, before his Mark Hunt at UFC 200, Lesnar failed 2 drug tests conducted by USADA.
Oh, God.
It just gets interesting. I'm just reading stuff, UFC lawsuit people. Just reading stuff.
You know what? I will say this. I will go on record and say that I would say maybe, I feel comfortable saying 95% of the athletes who fight in mixed martial arts in the UFC are pretty much clean. Like there's athletes that like Max Holloway, clean, Ilya Topuria, clean, Charles Oliveira, clean, Michael Chandler, clean. Like I can name a whole bunch of guys who've been able to produce a lot of, passing drug samples, right? And then you do have those clouds where it's like, hey, he's out of USADA. Oh, nah, he's out of the testing pool. Now he's oh my God, catastrophic injury. He's back way faster than before. Once again, I can't speak upon those people. They need to come out and they lay their head on the pillow every single night with a big count, feeling good, whatever it may be. They're the only ones you can come out and say, yes, I did do drugs. I need to get to a point. I feel comfortable saying I've never taken drugs. Every single thing I've done in the gym, tests I've given, I'm excited when USADA shows up. I offer him dinner. I try to cook dinner for her and give her whatever she needs. But I cannot speak on that. And then when you say the new era of the fans, they never came in at the beginning of the Wild Wild West. They're like, Kate, everybody should be clean. But guys, people
weren't clean.
People weren't clean.
People were not clean. They really weren't. But we'll put this topic to rest, I guess, because we're getting on. But it is what it is. I think this narrative from the new Usher fans benefits you, DJ. We believe you. We believe you for sure. We believe that GSP was clean. There is some things about GSP that, this and that. But en masse, it does benefit fighters like you. You're still in the GOAT conversation to us. But there's just a new mindset coming along in the sport, which I think is good overall. But obviously, it's going to clash with the original mindset of the sport. That's just how it is. I need to be careful how I speak on all this because since the Nina drama beef, I don't know. I've become aware that the UFC is aware of me, and that does make me worry here and there. Apparently, they all know who I am, and they're not fond of me at all.
There's nothing they can do. They can't touch you, Guru. This is the thing about people got to understand is that you built your community from your hard work. Nobody has given you anything, right? Like your content you make is great. Some of it, the one you did with Michael Chandler and his children, I wasn't a fan of, I'll be honest. But other than that,
some of it's crazy as fuck. I know. I get crazy.
Some of the stuff is crazy, but at the end of the day, you're bringing a lot of things to light and you're saying certain things and you're just giving your honest opinion. And the fans can either like it or they can hate it. Right. And when you build your community by you just being honest and and you clearly have a passion for the sport. Right. So for me, the UFC can't do anything to you. They can't touch you. What are they going to do? They can't touch you because you don't rely on the UFC. You rely on your fans to support you and enjoy your content. And your content is very enjoyable. I'm one of them. I'm subscribed to the channel. I've made donations before. He's got some of my money, ladies and gentlemen, being straightforward. But I think, I've never heard that the new usher of fans have an expectation on the drug test. So that was new to me because I don't talk to the fans all the time, right? I don't you interact with your community more than I do with mine, if that makes sense, right? You did a live, you guys talk back and forth, you guys talk about all the fights. So I wanted to hear your perspective on this because you have a good take. You listen to the fans and you're more of a fan than I am. I'm an athlete, right? Yeah. That's why even when I talked to Michael, the producer, he was like, oh man, Bo Nickel needs to be fighting more. No, he doesn't. He's had 6 fights and he wants to take his time. He doesn't have time for era because 2 fights and he's like, well, he's not gonna become a world champion. That's what he wants. So it's always like to get a perspective of somebody who is truly a fan.
Yeah. I mean, that's the advantage I have, because if I just did videos, I think that is why my videos do well, is because of the live streams. It's because I actually have the conversations, and then I can see, oh, we're having this conversation about this topic, and the chat's going crazy with donations and things about this topic. I'll make a video about that today, because the MMA fan base that's in my live chat, I'm watching a live conversation between me and them go really well virtually. I can get a video out of this, which I think really helps my channel. But
let's talk about the Chandler versus Charles Oliveira, right? Absolute banger. Right, I think Michael Chandler is always going to be excited no matter who he fights. I do believe if he does fight Conor McGregor, if that ever happens, I think he beats the brick off Conor McGregor, just because he's a hard worker and he's just going to put fucking gas, the pedal to the metal. And I don't think Conor can sustain that an ass whooping. Right, he's got to get out of the silk sheets. He's got to put the cocaine down. He did mention, ladies and gentlemen, that he does do cocaine in the rape allegations that he just did in the court. So I just don't know if Conor is ever going to come back to mixed martial arts.
Yeah. Let's talk about Oliveira Chandler. It was a good fight. I think it was a good performance from Charles Oliveira. I think Oliveira is starting to consider the possibility that he doesn't need to get into an insane car wreck of a fight every single time. I think he's at that point of his career where he's like, okay, if I lose now, I think the idea of if Charles loses, he's done is more prevalent than before. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he's starting to consider that a little bit more when going into fights, because I think he's like, okay, if I slip down this mountain, it's getting bigger and bigger to climb back up. Whereas if he's a champion, you can ask for an immediate rematch here and there. So I think he's less opposed to the risks. So I think we're going to see a lot more of a patient Oliveira. But Chandler's going to make it. He's going to stick it out. He's either going to get finished and go out, or he's going to give it his all, as we saw in the 5th round. He was a little bit cheating in moments. But I'm going to be honest. There was a lot of back of the head shots going on, a few cage grabs, eye pokes. I saw the Weasel on YouTube made a video breaking down all of that as well. But hey, I don't know. I feel like, go on.
Hey, at the end of the day, it ain't cheating unless you get caught. And obviously, he was grabbing the cage, he was hitting the back of the head, and the ref thought it was all legal. And here's the weird thing, believe it or not, is any strike that you hit, as long as you make contact with the ear, it is considered legal. So if I'm punching you and I'm hitting you like this, right here, that's considered back of the head. If I'm hitting you like this, that is considered legal. It's considered okay. Even though I'm hitting you in the back of the head, as long as I make contact with your ear. What they consider the back of the head is if you have a mohawk, that's considered the back of the head. So it's a very interesting fine line. Granted, I'm with you. He was fucking him up in the back of the head. But there's some error where it's like they don't really be straightforward of like, hey, what's considered the back of the head? And in the back, her Dean be like, if you strike the ear, as long as you hit the ear, you can have some fucking double XL hands and some gloves. If I'm hitting the back of the head, as long as I have contact with the ear, it's considered legal. And Michael Chandler did it probably good 20 solid. I wasn't counting, but I'm sure
good 20.
Maybe 20.
A good 20 of them.
Okay, in the back of the head. But, in the heat of the moment, he's losing. He's down by 4 rounds. And he just, probably blacked out.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, he just saw red and attacked viciously the back of Oliveira's head. But Oliveira survived it, makes it to a decision. You did mention before that you like his chances against McGregor a lot more. You think he would beat McGregor for sure.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I would pick Chandler to beat McGregor just purely because I don't think McGregor's in the game in that way anymore. Like, I don't think he's going to be ready to grit down where he needs to. I think, listen, everyone's really tough until Chandler lands a heavy calf kick in the first round and McGregor thinks back to his millions and all of a sudden he doesn't want to grit as much anymore like he did in the Mendez fight when he was hungry and on the come up. But I will say I'm more confident with McGregor's chances after the performance against Oliveira. I know Chandler had been out for a long time, but on the feet, he didn't look in any way near the level. Like in the first 4 rounds, I thought there was going to be a lot more danger for Oliveira on the feet.
Yeah.
In my opinion. And Oliveira was very, I don't want to say easily, but very like casually walking down Chandler in moments and picking his shots against him. And it's like you could see everything Chandler was winging his way. Whereas the Chandler I remember before on his run, it was more of a shock when he landed something. Whereas in this fight, it was very... So it is probably the matchup McGregor should come back to. But I still don't think McGregor would win that matchup.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. And I think Chandler's trying to be more calculated when he was striking, right? Because when I talked to him, he was like, dude, and I told him straight up, I was like, dude, you go from like a 12 to a fucking 18. It's, you know, you remember when he fought, I think it was Dustin Poirier, he was cracking Dustin with a beautiful right hand over and over and over again. And you would see when Michael Chandler would go, he would actually land great shots against Charles Oliveira, and that's where Charles Oliveira took the game to the ground, right? Because he was a way better grappler. But if Chandler can just go, so I feel like his last fight when he fought, can't remember who it was, he just went 100, he went balls to the wall. Now he just went a little bit less balls to the wall. So I think he's trying to find that happy medium to where, okay, where can I go? Because he came back to the corner and he was like, guys, give me a combination that you think it will work, right? That's what the commentator said. So for me, when somebody is asking for that type of guidance, he's still trying to get accustomed to this new style. And I texted him this morning. I said, dude, great fucking fight. You're still a savage. And he goes, yeah, hey, I wasn't 1,000. I wasn't, at a 12. I was more like a 6 or 7. I was like, yeah, but that's okay. You can still continue to build. So if he fights Conor isn't going to walk him down like that. Conor's going to get out there and dance, and Michael Chandler's going to be able to set up his shot to where Oliveira, he walks down in that void and he forces somebody to fight. And then when Chandler would do 1-2, he tries to run back out, and that's when Oliveira catches him. And I just think Charles Oliveira is at this level now in the game where I agree with you. He's realizing that he has such an advantage over people in the grappling aspect, and he took it there. And once he got the body triangle, and you saw Michael Chandler, he came back to the corner. He was the only other fighter ever here say this, is I took that round off because I was going to try to make a mistake to try to get out, right?
Oh, yeah.
What was his name? Henry Cejudo said the exact same thing. If he was to fight Aljamain Sterling, he goes, if Aljo gets my back, I'm taking the round off because I'm not going to get him the fuck off my back. And when Chandler said that, okay, so we knew he didn't want to do anything on the ground, and he didn't want Charles Oliveira on his back, and I wouldn't want that motherfucker on my back either because he's so hard to get off, and he's longer than Chandler. Once that body triangle gets locked up, it's like, okay, the round's over unless I'm going to twist and get out, supposedly. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's a hard thing to solve just because where does Chandler go next, right? I think the only fight that makes sense is Conor McGregor, but other than that, who's going to fight Dustin again? Who's going to fight Gaethje? Where does Chandler go from here? Obviously, Charles, he's going to fight the winner of Islam versus Arman. But for Chandler, what does he do next? I mean,
first of all, I don't want Charles to fight the winner of Arman versus Makhachev.
Really?
That's one thing. I'll get to that.
Okay.
But maybe I'll start with it, seeing as you're so recoiling in, you don't understand that take. I think you should be on a win streak to fight for a title in the UFC.
Okay.
He lost his last 2 fights to both Arman Tsarukyan and Islam Makhachev. And listen, maybe if Arman Tsarukyan beats Makhachev and they're like, okay, the Oliveira Tsarukyan fight was very competitive. We're going to run that one back. Makhachev's not ready for a quick turnaround for an immediate rematch or whatever reason it is. But if Makhachev were to beat Arman Tsarukyan, I want to see Makhachev move on to his next legacy. You know what I mean? Like, he needs to chase something more. It's not just, you've beaten Arman Tsarukyan, now back to Oliveira, and here's Poirier on another win or two, and Gaethje hasn't fought Gaethje yet, but I do want to see something new for Makhachev, because I don't know, I feel like he's, everyone talks about a featherweight thing or another lightweight, like Oliveira getting his rematch, and Oliveira was a champion, and he did defend, even though the weight miss was there, but I'd like to see Oliveira run it against another contender. There's a lot of guys at lightweight that are just sort of just outside. Like, I'd love to see Oliveira take on the winner of a Moicano versus Pimlet in like a big pay-per-view spot.
Ooh, that's sexy.
And You know what I mean? And then you can get one of those names in that big fight between Moicano and Pimlet into the top. That's their, like, not stepping stone, but that's their ticket if they can cash it to the top of the division. You know what I mean? Because we get a lot of isolationism at the top of the lightweight division with Gaethje put Poirier this, Gaethje Poirier 2, Gaethje Oliveira, Poirier Oliveira, Chandler versus all of them. And then nothing really happens until Gaethje fights a Fiziev or Poirier steps down and fights a Benoit Saint Denis. So I'd like to see Oliveira fight one more, or I'd like to see Oliveira just cash in on the McGregor fight because I want him to make a lot of money. But I think that could stand alone as a main event of a pay-per-view. McGregor Chandler could as well. Yeah, 1,000%, I think you're about to say. Mm-hmm. But McGregor could as well stand alone at the top of a pay-per-view. But I think Oliveira has the status as a fighter that warrants him being in the main event of a pay-per-view, whereas Chandler is, I mean, he may be ranked number 7 or 8 after this in the division. So for Chandler, I mean, I'd like to see him run it against an up-and-coming contender in the lightweight division. He's had a very UFC-friendly time of things, in my opinion. You know, he comes in, he gets Dan Hooker for a title shot, Oliveira, Gaethje. Then he gets Ferguson coming off some losses. He beats Ferguson. And then he gets, I believe, Poirier. There might be another fight in there that I'm forgetting about. And now it's 2 years off. McGregor fight waiting in the works. Oh, you get Oliveira again in a title elimination bout position. Let's restore order here and have him, you know, let's have some justice and some like parliamentary procedure here, you know, where he takes on a contender that's on the up and coming, maybe like a Fares Siam or someone like that, someone who's put in the work, got themselves in the rankings, and then if he can bounce back there, we can talk big fights again.
Damn, I forgot about Pimlet versus Moicano, and I actually kind of like that too. Why not give him the opportunity to fight Charles Oliveira, and then if Islam is able to get past Arman, then, you know, lightweight, they don't have to be welterweight. And the welterweight champion right now, who is the welterweight champion right now? That is Bilal Muhammad.
No one remembers his name. There you go.
Bilal Muhammad.
Almost poetic there. Bilal Muhammad is the welterweight
Bilal
champ.
Muhammad, but he just got injured. We have Shawkat versus Ian Gary that's coming up next. So it's an interesting thing, but I agree with you. I think if you let Islam fight Arman, and then if Arman wins, they can figure that out. But if Islam's able to beat Arman, why not give the winner of Moicano versus Pillman versus Charles Oliveira, and the winner of that could fight Islam if they were to get past it. So I kind of like that. That's one of the things about mixed martial arts. When you watch it, you almost forget about what's on the horizon when it comes to the lightweight division, right? Because everybody's just remember what just happened last night, which was, you know, Charles Oliveira, right? I was like, oh man, he needs to fight the winner. And it's like Islam already beat him and finished him, if that, right? And then Arman fought him and Arman beat him too. So I can see that. But I like that path that you said just now. Have Moicano and Pimlet fight, and then winner of that can fight Charles Oliveira. The winner of that gets a title shot. And then, you know, Michael Chandler, he can fight it up and coming, or Michael Chandler just waits there for Conor McGregor, or Conor McGregor versus Charles Oliveira for a money grab. That's an absolute banger. Oh damn! You know,
there's a lot.
There's a lot. There's
a lot going
there.
on at lightweight.
You know, you just
there's a lot there.
You did a nice, beautiful spread.
Nick is dropping some dimes of suggestions to talk about.
Oh Lord. Let's do a couple more.
Said, what do you
get you out of here? Let's do a couple more. Get you out of here.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking, because there's a lot of topics here, but apparently some things have just been announced. He said, "What do you guys think about Max Holloway versus Michael Chandler?" Chandler mentioned it in his call out. I don't mind that matchup. I do think that Chandler needs to, super fights aside, I think it's time for the common man of the lightweight division to get a super fight, rather than the super fighters of the super fight division to continue in their super fights. Eventually you owe a young gun a chance to be in that mix, or you don't move on. I don't know if you want to give a take on Holloway Chandler, but apparently they want to talk about Tyson Paul and Till versus Tommy Fury getting announced today. Damn, Darren Till, Tommy Fury got announced. That's pretty big.
Hey, I think if Darren Till is able to knock out Tommy Fury, I think you see Darren Till versus Jake Paul, which would be an interesting fight. And, you know, the Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul, you know, somebody who's 58 years old, and he just came out and said this. He just came out and said this. He said he almost died over the summer. He had to do in June. He had to get blood fusion. He lost, I don't know, I think it was 8 pounds. It was a lot of weight before getting the opportunity to fight Jake Paul. Now, for me, when I see that, I'm shocked the commission allowed that to happen, because I'm sure if I told One Championship I almost died, I had to give so much blood transfusion, no way in hell they're gonna fucking give me the green card to go fight in mixed martial arts, let alone boxing, even if I was 58 years old. With that being said, I'm happy for Mike Tyson to be able to make that money. I'm happy that he was able to usher in a new thing for boxing and for Netflix to be able to give Netflix to give boxing the opportunity to use that platform, and it was free. But taking a step back, when I look at that for Jake Paul, it's my biggest thing is like, I love Jake Paul. I think what he's doing for boxing is absolutely amazing. But I still believe that there's somebody that's his age that he can fight. That's 7-2 or 10-1 or whatever it may be. But that's not the coach. Tommy Fury. And Tommy Fury beat him. So exactly. Let's go find another guy who's the same level as Tommy Fury and have fight him. Him talking about fighting Canelo. Stop this nonsense. Stop it.
Yeah. I know. I will say, and maybe we'll end it here on this final note. My thoughts on the Jake Paul, Mike Tyson fight is society is collapsing. It is a shame what we're seeing. I think money is controlling morals more than ever. I think there's certain legends that should be left alone, but money can entice everyone. And I understand Tyson taking the fight, even if he wasn't in great condition, because certain money is just, it sets up your future generations that instead of just you and your kids, you can know that when I'm gone, the ones beyond me are going to be okay as well. And then you also think, you look around your people and you see others struggling around you and you think, God, I could help them. Am I a piece of shit for not accepting a 30 million payday against Jake Paul when I know so-and-so who lives down the street, his mother's struggling? I could easily set him $500,000 if I do. You know what I mean? So there's... I don't know. I just think it was a damnation of society, the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight. I don't like this the goofiness and the charade of that type of thing. I think Jake Paul should be getting in there with some better names, to be honest with you. But who knows? We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens moving forward. Gamble it against Bertabiev, Jake Paul. Take the 1 in 1,000 chance that you could chin him and actually be considered great. But I don't know. I don't think Jake Paul's a horrible person, though.
No.
He might be. I'm sure there's something in his history that I'm not aware of. I don't watch Jake Paul. But he ain't killed no one. I'm going to save my... you know what I mean? I mean, after Mike Tyson's talking about his blood transfusion, there was a chance he could have. So I really don't know how the commission allowed that. But I'm going to save my judgment for the true evil. You know what I'm saying? Rather than just... we'll leave it there. Thank you for having me on.
Of course. Good. Well, Guru, is there anything you want to let the fans know where they can follow you and how they can support you? Because like I said, a lot of people out there aren't a fan of his content. I love his content. I think it's great. It gives me a good laugh. And I think sometimes that's what people need in life is a good belly laugh. So Guru, the stage is yours, brother.
Yeah. YouTube, the MMA Guru. That's literally all I got. That's where the hub is for everything. Maybe someday I'll branch out. I should be having a sponsor soon. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But we'll see what goes on. YouTube MMA Guru. And one message to the fans. I am a piece of shit, but my content's really good. I promise my content's really good. So you will see a clip of me saying something. You're like, what the hell did he just say there? Or what did he just say about this guy? And I'm just like, God, I'm sorry, guys. I get caught up in the moment. But try and look beyond how terrible of a person I am and just enjoy the content for what it is, because it is good stuff, I feel like. I do put out some good effort, high effort stuff.
I would say it is great content and very, very high effort. Boys, that is our guest, MMA Guru. Check him out on YouTube. Thank you once again for coming on the show. I am your host, Demetrious Johnson, co-host Nick Pappas, Michael Wansover, and our guest, MMA Guru. We will see you guys in the next episode of the MightyCast. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another episode of the Mighty Recap. And this is part of the episode where we recap everything we just went through or talked about with our guest. And our guest was MMA Guru. The biggest thing, and I know it's very taboo, is when you start talking about people's failed USADA drug test, right? Because we always want to look at it in a perfect world where all the champions or anybody who's, ever stepped foot in Octagon has always tested clean and had good USADA results, and that was one of the things that the producers in the MightyCast channel and MMA Guru have brought up. And I think when you look at, Jon Jones' legacy, if he was retiring now, he's done everything that anybody could in mixed martial arts. Defended a light heavyweight championship, became a heavyweight champion, defended both belts, something I never did. I was a flyweight champion, and then I went over to one championship. I became the flyweight champion there. It is 135, so it's 10 pounds more than it is in America. But in America, it would be considered 125, 135 flyweight, bantamweight champion. So two different things, but he was able to achieve that. Now, there is that cloud looming over his legacy of the 3 failed USADA tests. That's what the producer, Nick Pappas, brought up into the conversation. Now, what do you do? And when we were talking about the Tom Aspinall versus Jon Jones and Jon Jones versus Alex Pereira taking on Magomed Ankalaev, like it's very cut forward, right? Typically 9 out of 10 times when you have a champion and you have an interim champion, it's always those two are deemed to fight. Now, Jon Jones did come on record saying that he is willing to relinquish his world title, heavyweight championship, in order to pursue that fight against Alex Pereira. Now, Dana White came on record saying that he is not going to make that matchup. If we want to see Jon Jones fight again, if Jon Jones wants to fight again, he will fight Tom Aspinall. And I think that's a big W from Dana White, keeping the champions in line and keeping them doing what they're supposed to do. Like, if you're a champion, you're supposed to fight the interim champion or the number 1 contender in the heavyweight division. Now, if he was a light heavyweight champion, then it would be different. He could fight Alex Pereira, but he's not anymore. And then you also have number 1 contenders in the light heavyweight division with Magomed Ankalaev, who's waiting for his opportunity to fight Alex Pereira. Now, if Alex Pereira beats Ankalaev and Jon Jones beats Tom Aspinall, then boom, yes, then you do that super fight. But I think at the end of the day, they're trying to capture lightning in a bottle. And here's a kicker. If you have Tom Aspinall fight Jon Jones, and let's say Tom Aspinall beats the brick off Jon Jones, then you have another star that's still young, that's able to continue his journey and his legacy on fighting more people. Or if Jon Jones beats Tom Aspinall, then it's like, of course, Jon Jones beat Tom Aspinall. He's a GOAT. He's a legend. Jon Jones retire, but you still have Tom Aspinall there. So Tom Aspinall's star hasn't really gone. He's still there whether he wins against Jon Jones or if he loses against Jon Jones. So that star is still going to stay shining bright because he's going to continue to fight. And then regardless whatever happens to Jon Jones, he's going to retire. He's 37. He's going to be 38 next July. So regardless, his time here is done. It's not like he can do something more that's going to catapult him to another stratosphere. You get my drift. Then you have, on the other side, you have Alex Pereira. Now, if Alex Pereira just fights Jon Jones and loses, then it's like, okay, well, then Jon Jones retires, and it's okay, you still have Tom Aspinall here, who didn't get the opportunity to fight Jon Jones or beat Jon Jones. And then you also have Ankalaev here, who's like, okay, who am I going to fight next? But if you have Ankalaev fight Alex Pereira, he beats Alex Pereira, then it's boom. Or if Alex Pereira beats, Ankalaev, then it almost elevates Alex Pereira even higher. So there's an interesting battle between this triangle, well, not triangle, but this 4 fights or whatever you want to call it, that we cannot figure out what's the best way to navigate it and what's the best way the fans want to navigate it. If, when you hear the fans talk, they want to see Jon Jones taking on Tom Aspinall. And, Jon Jones says he feels that he's done enough in the sport where he can get what he wants, or give this guy what he wants. And what he wants is Alex Pereira. And he came out and said that he doesn't want nothing to do with Tom Aspinall. Before the fight, he says, I don't want to do business with Tom Aspinall. He's just an asshole, blah, 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 blah. Goes up and says that. And he said that if the UFC wants me to fight again, then I will not fight I want to fight Alex Pereira. If they want me to fight Tom Aspinall, then I guess this is my retirement fight, and I'm going to ride off in the sunset. So that was the most thing that got me excited about this fight against Jones versus Stipe, was to see what was going to be the aftermath after he beat Stipe, because I knew he was going to beat Stipe. What was going to be the aftermath? Because now we have an unconcluded ending to Jon Jones' story. Does Jon Jones fight Tom Aspinall? Or does Jon Jones ride off in the sunset? Or does Dana White go back on his word and have Jon Jones versus Alex Pereira? That's what makes me more excited about this storyline with Jon Jones. Not that he beat Stipe, about what he wants to do next. Nick Pappas, come in. Let me know what you think. What do you think, Nick? Right? Because you are a fan. You follow the sport. You do a lot of back work that a lot of people don't realize. Nick Pappas is one of the gentlemen on the Mighty staff team who helps out and makes all the videos nice and sexy for you beautiful viewers. What are your thoughts when it comes to this whole dynamic of the Jones saga, the Alex Pereira saga, Tom Aspinall saga? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like Jon versus Tom is going to be a massive fight now. And I was trying to look in the weeds of everything. And I'm someone that falls for promo. Like, I'll watch WWE and I fall for everything. Like, it's bad how easy I am to convince. And so even before the Stipe fight, I was like, well, these promos are looking good. Stipe's a firefighter. He's got some muscles. And so I buy everything. And part of me is wondering if Jon was just kind of orchestrating this whole thing with Aspinall. And I can't really work my head around it. Part of me thinks it was a work. Part of me thinks that's just who he is. But I think that Jon versus Tom is one of the biggest fights the UFC can make right now. I think that it's probably actually the biggest fight they can make right now. I think if Alex goes out there and sparks Ankalaev, then you have Tom and Jon maybe fight International Fight Week. In July, you have Alex Pereira front row. It doesn't get bigger than that for the UFC right now if he takes on the winner. So that's kind of how I hope everything plays out, but I'm curious to see what happens. What do you think, DJ?
I mean, I like that. I like that game plan. It's all going to be up to, is Dana going to keep his word, saying that if Jones was to fight again, he has to fight Tom Aspinall, or does Dana, go back and have him fight Jones versus Alex Pereira? But I like that. Now, we already asked Guru. He has a strong community. What is your thoughts on what deems somebody in that GOAT status?
I try not to look at it as a GOAT status thing. I think there's just so many different aspects, right? Like you versus Jon Jones, you're completely different fighters, and it's hard to even compare you two because you're just opposite ends of the spectrum. So I kind of looking at it more as a Mount Rushmore. I never try to look at it as a GOAT status, like you, GSP, Anderson, Jon, Khabib. It's like, I don't necessarily understand why we have to have a GOAT. Why does there has to be the one guy that is the best, where I think there's so many different guys that bring things to the table. It's the same debate as LeBron versus Jordan. Who's the best? Who's the best? Who's the best? I just don't think you can really make that argument that there's one guy. And I think with the UFC right now, those arguments are so close. I mean, Jon's record stands alone in terms of how impressive it is. He's never lost a fight. I mean, the 12-6 with Hamill, that should get overturned at this point, but he has those steroid tests, and you can't get past that. Now, yes, most people were probably doing steroids that he was facing in that era. I mean, Chael Sonnen, right? He's come out and said, I was on the juice, but I knew he was on the juice too. But I try to not look at a GOAT argument. I try to look at it more as a Mount Rushmore, because I just think it's way too hard to pick one guy in this sport. I don't actually think that there is a definitive GOAT right now.
Ooh, I like that. I like how you're because I feel the same way. It's very hard. Obviously, I feel like Jon Jones is one of the greatest of all time. I feel like GSP was one of the greatest of all time. I think Anderson Silva is one of the greatest of all time. I mean, the things that those guys have done in their career, especially Anderson Silva and GSP, even myself, Jon Jones, even Khabib, and the list is going to go on. You didn't have a guy like Ilia Topuria who's starting to make his claim. He's just getting started. He's super young. I mean, the list just goes on. And I actually kind of like that. I think from now on, people say, who's my GOAT? And I was like, I can't just pick one person because everybody's done something. I think the Mount Rushmore is a good way to answer, because mixed martial arts is a very intriguing sport because everybody has different skill set where you have, a guy like LeBron James or Michael Jordan. Yes, they're only playing basketball, but it's two different time eras and they're both good at two different things, right? I mean, LeBron James I think he's probably one of the longest reigning players to play in the league of basketball, right? I mean, he's playing with his son, for God's sake, right? So, I mean, that right there can defy all odds over Michael Jordan, but Michael Jordan was able to make the team special where Michael Jordan never jumped from team to team to team. He was with him, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, and the whole squad. So I can see that, but I like that GOAT. I like that instead of changing the GOAT conversation to be just particular one person, make it more about a bunch of individuals in that time frame, essentially. Well, I think now it'll be interesting to see where they go from here. Do they make the Tom versus Jon Jones, or Tom versus I don't know who else, or Jon Jones versus Alex Pereira? I mean, only time is going to tell. And then, it'll be kind of curious to see where Michael Chandler goes from next. I hope he finally gets that Conor McGregor fight because he waited on the shelf for a very, very long time, but he's always excited to watch. And the Charles Oliveira, I'm excited to see what he does next. I mean, he's got a bright future. I think he's going to be, eventually slowing down soon because he's been in the UFC for I don't know how long. He's been in there for a very, very, very long time. Forever, yeah. I feel like it. And that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Max Holloway too, right? He's been there forever. I'm worried that my gut tells me we will not get the Jones fight versus Aspinall. My gut tells me we probably
we're still there, huh? We're still there, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, when have the UFC ever paid someone the big money besides Conor? It's like, I don't see it happening. I mean, even when Ngannou was still here, Dana was saying, oh, Jones is afraid to fight Ngannou. And then the second Ngannou leaves, Ngannou's scared to fight. It's like, what? Which one is it? So I'd be surprised if it happens. And I think Jon, he doesn't need to take the fight. I mean, he's had an amazing, amazing career. I hope he takes it. But I would be surprised if they really paid that payday that Jon would want for that fight.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, how much is enough? Like, that's always the kicker, right? How much is enough? Is he asked for 20 million, 30 million plus pay-per-view in the back end? I mean, it's once again, we will never know. But Tom Aspinall said he did talk to the UFC after the event, and he said all good news. So hopefully we get Tom Aspinall on the MightyCast and talk to him to see where his head's at. And not just to talk about the Jon Jones and Tom Aspinall, just get to know Tom Aspinall as a person, as a fighter. He's got a great YouTube. And to ask him like his journey and what's his thought, and being a backup fighter. I've never had the opportunity to be a backup fighter. Thank God. And I'll be kind of curious to get his take on that. Like, did you go through a full training camp? Did you have to diet, etc.? Were you still compensated? You get your show money? Like, how does all that work? That's something I've never got to be able to talk to an athlete about that. So, but all in all, I think MMA Guru makes a lot of good points. I think he's, my opinion, I think he's important in the community of mixed martial arts. A lot of people don't like him. I enjoy him because he says things that kind of rub people the wrong way. And, it is what it is. But the one thing I will say I was thinking about when I was at the gym is that here's the biggest thing. The UFC doesn't need Jon Jones. The UFC doesn't need Conor McGregor. And the reason why I say that, and that's no disrespect, the UFC didn't need me. And I'm one of the greatest of all time that people are going to say. Here's the reason why I say that is because the UFC is such a big brand that Jon Jones, before he tore his pec or before he even fought Suragan, he took like, I think 2 to 3 years off, right? Because he defended his belt. He's like, I'm going to put some weight on. And the UFC still kept on going and nobody batted an eye. They didn't miss Jon Jones. And they were still able to make a lot of fucking money. Conor McGregor hasn't fought in, 2-3 years, and the UFC is becoming more profitable every single year, meaning that the UFC does a good job of marketing the new fighters that are coming. You got Ian Gary, Shavkat, you got Ilia Topuria, you still got Max Holloway, you still got Izzy Adesanya, you still have all these fighters. Eventually, Jon Jones is going to retire. Izzy's going to retire. Stipe just retired, DC retired. You're having this new guard where the UFC is such a mega big brand that people are always going to tune in just to watch UFC because it's the premier brand of mixed martial arts here in North America. So I feel that the UFC can be like, okay, you don't want to fight Tom Aspinall? No worries. Jon Jones, you retire. Alex Pereira, you're fighting Ankalaev. Tom Aspinall, we're going to find you a number one contender you're going to fight. Jon Jones rides on the sunset, and people will talk about how great he was and him being one of the greatest of all time. I think that's a very possible thing, and I think people, the UFC, when they look at their books, they're still going to be making a shitload of money. Well, ladies and gentlemen, please let us know in the comments down below what you guys want to see next. Do you want to see Jon Jones taking on Tom Aspinall, or are you guys okay with Jon Jones getting what he wants, which is the Alex Pereira fight? Or do you guys want, like Nick said, keep the integrity of the sport, have the champion fight the interim champion, and then Alex Pereira taking on the normal contender, which is right now, according to what the UFC said, is Magomed Ankalaev. Let us know in the comments down below, and make sure you guys go give our boy MMA Guru a subscribe, follow, like on his channel. He's busting out amazing content for you beautiful people, and you guys support him. I am your host, Demetrious Johnson. That is one of the editors, co-hosts of this show, Nick Pappas. As always, we'll see you guys at the next episode of the MightyCast.